Okay, I hope I'm not. I hope I sound not so horrible today, but I got a little bit of a tiny little bit of a cold. Um, this is the let me see, the third installment of our kind of basic corporate model, but it's really not so basic at all. First thing we did was we demonstrated that you really should split the existing and the projected depreciation, and for the existing one you can kind of make a I don't know what just happened here, but I thought we had made a solver that makes these both goes to zero. So what happened with that? Uh, Hell, okay. Perhaps I changed something. Uh-oh. Oh, shit. This should have been zero here. Well, I'll go back and do that. And then in this video, we're going to simply take the interest expense and the interest income, connect that to the profit and loss, and look at what I did here. I forgot to include it in the cash flow. And then we'll add the interest income. Uh, and we'll make first sure that our balance sheet still balances. Okay, and after we do that, we're going to first use the opening balance so we avoid a circular reference. And that will be all very straightforward. And right now, however, we have the average balance. And when we put the average balance back into here, we'll have a circular reference, because these new debt issues and debt repaids and debt issues, cash used and cash repaid, and even the minimum test here, that's all a function of the cash flow, but the cash flow itself is a function of this interest expense and interest income that I conveniently left out so far. So that's what we'll do first. Now, let me just fix that horrible solver thing and get back with you. Okay, I just had for some reason I had a constraint wrong in the solver. So this solver was actually, okay, I had this wrong. I don't know what I did. So remember, we make the ending balance is zero of the gross plant and the accumulated depreciation. And we change the implicit growth, and we change the starting retirements. And then we get this depreciation that's kind of falling very quickly. And this depreciation is increasing pretty quickly. And at the end of the day, our depreciation actually falls because we're growing at a slower rate than the amount implied by the accumulated depreciation in our balance sheet. Okay, so let's get back to this one. So the first thing, let's just do this. Now, look at this. I, of course, did this wrong. Really bad. But, you know, what we'll do is just use the opening balance only. Okay, Shift Control R, and then we'll, on this one, similarly, we'll only use the opening balance. Okay, and then we'll do our basic connection and put, that's the interest expense. here and add the interest income here. So let's just make sure that we subtract the interest income, add the interest expense the way we're supposed to. Okay, and then we can put this as a subtotal using the correct rule of lines. I think this is a good one. And we can take the same interest expense and the same interest income, and this time we better subtract the interest income and add the interest expense. Okay, and I think we'll why don't we add one more thing. If it's a corporate model, we can put less the dividends up here and kind of call that as some sort of well, where should I put the dividend payout ratio? I guess I'll do it really badly and just stick it in here. So let's say it's a 60% payout ratio, and we'll F4, I hope, multiply that times the earnings. Now we have a more negative cash flow in the first year. Okay, and hopefully our balance sheet doesn't balance. It shouldn't, and we need to plop the dividends just in our equity account. Now the balance sheet balances. Okay, so we've got our three-statement model, and we have a balance sheet balancing, and everything seems to be okay, of course, until we make the interest on the average balance, which exactly it should be. Right now, our model is assuming that all of the revenues and all of the expenses, all of the capital expenditures, that's enough. All of these cash flow items, including the interest and the repayments of debt, occur on one day of the year. So it's as if you had a restaurant and you only had it open for New Year's Eve, which maybe you have a very big New Year's Eve restaurant. Maybe that's okay. Now, if it's open throughout the course of the year, you should use the middle of the year and not the end of the year. That should be kind of straightforward. Now, when we change this to the middle of the year, where are we? So we'll just simply change two things, and we take this one. I hope we have two of them, so we can just push this one, and then we get a circular reference. We get the dreaded blue lines, and we do the same thing here, and we get this one. Now, it is possible, and I have tried working through this with a formula, an algebraic formula. That's kind of a long formula, but it can work until you put things like the minimum might cause a problem and everything else. But what we're going to do is take this line here, and we're going to make a function for this line, and the function can start, I suppose, it can't really start with this. We could put cash flow before financing. I think we could do that. And then we need the interest rates, and we're going to need the opening balance, we're going to need the minimum test, this interest rate, and then we have to basically go through the whole thing. Now, if you did a copy and paste macro on this one, that would be a pain. You'd have to do a little copy and paste and copy the paste the whole line. This is one where I think you can argue that a function really would be a little bit better. So let's go to the developer tab and go to macros. Now, if we look at this workbook, we have nothing. So what we can do is just type a little thing called functions. Okay. And that will allow us to find all our functions. Don't put function, because that might screw everything up. And let's put function net cash flow. Now, when we finally do this, we can compute the net cash flow a second time here and kind of have a little test. Okay? And then let's put this down. And we know that somewhere at the end, we're going to want the net cash flow. Let's just put 999 for now. Okay? And then we go back. And then we can say, well, our net cash flow is equal to cash before, how about, oh, that's going to be too long. Cash before financing. And we need to put that. And then once we have that one, let's put minus the interest expense. I don't know. And plus the interest income. Minus the dividends. Now the dividends are a function of the net income, so the dividends we can't read in, and certainly we can't read the interest expense or interest income in. So let's start with the interest expense. Interest expense is equal to the average. So whenever we have a worksheet, we can get the average, and we put the opening. How about we'll put open debt and close debt times the interest rate. Or we can put interest expense rate. We need two things in this formula. And excuse me, the opening debt is here, and interest expense rate is here. Okay, but we don't know the closing debt. Closing debt. If we want to kind of cheat a little, it's not really cheating at all, is we could go up here and see, well, that's the new debt issued minus the debt repaid. So the next thing we have to do is get open debt plus new debt issued minus debt repaid. Now, if you remember, doesn't matter if you don't remember, you can kind of start the repaid. The debt repaid is first, and the added debt is second. Okay, so we keep going backwards, and we put the debt repaid. We have to be so careful with the spelling. Equals the Net cash flow, and that's the problem here. This net cash flow is used here and it's here, so we're going to have to go around and around and have a iteration loop. And we say, well, net cash flow net cash flow, and when the net cash flow is positive, so what we do is put a function dot maximum of this or 0, and then we put, well, and I'm going to do it differently. If net cash flow is greater than 0, then debt repaid is what minimum of the net cash flow or the opening debt. Okay, so that's, and then let's put a end if. Now if you do this, somewhere you also better, if we're going to go around the iteration, we better put debt repaid equals 0. If you don't do that, it won't remember. There's some things where it'll do that. And now, okay. I think that's okay. Now, if the debt cash flow is the other way, okay. Well, no. Let's finish this. So we put cash flow subtotal equal net cash flow, and then we say plus cash. I don't want to say, how about cash reduction minus debt repaid that we just did here. And then finally we can say, well, we have the new debt issued is equal to the it's only if that's a minus, so we put a worksheet function dot maximum, because we're just doing a minus test, 0 minus cash flow. I think you don't really need the the minus or the 0. Okay, so we just have new debt if it's 0, and you switch the negative to the positive. Okay, so that's kind of the first one. And now we can do the interest income. It's almost the same kind of thing. And I hope we have the interest income right here, so we need that. And let's put that as the opening cash and the closing cash. And this time we need the interest income rate. So the next two inputs we need, and I think it's time to put these on the new line. We put a comma, and we can put opening cash and then interest income rate. Okay, so we're starting to get a few things here, but it's not that bad. Okay, and then we can put the same thing here as the closing cash, is an opening cash plus the new, how about we'll put new surplus, how about, we'll just put surplus cash. Minus cash reduction. That's what we've already defined it. Okay. Remember, this whole thing, the whole circular reference comes because this net cash flow down here, which we're using up here, we don't know until we know the interest expense and the interest income and all that. Of course, we might as well take this out now. Alright, now I shouldn't sigh again. Okay, so this is an easy one. This is surplus cash. That's just the worksheet function, and this time we just don't have a negative, so we just use the cash flow total. Okay, so we're just, once again, we're just redoing exactly what we did the first time. Cash flow subtotal is okay, but this time we use, if cash flow is negative, how about we'll put this, then we need to put our cash reduction here. And it's the minimum of the I did this really bad. So sorry about that. We always have to test with a positive. Cash reduction is the minimum of the cash flow, and it's not the opening cash this time. I'm going to call it the minimum minimum cash test. Okay, and if the cash flow is positive, we better also say negative rather. We better say the cash reduction is 0, and that means we better put a cash reduction equals 0, and we over here put the debt is equal to 0. Now I don't know if we really needed this up here. I don't think we really did. Let's not waste time, because we defined it under either case. Okay. Now the only thing we have to do here is get the minimum cash test. And we also have to finish the dividends. But the minimum cash test here, this was the opening balance minus the minimum cash balance. So we put the minimum cash test equals open cash minus minimum cash balance, and we keep going backwards. Minimum cash balance equals revenues. I think we'll just read that in because it's not So let's just read in the minimum cash balance. That's not affected by anything. Okay. And we're just about finished. The only other thing we need now is excuse me, we need to put in dividends. And the dividends, you recall, are the earnings, which so far are a function of interest and interest expense. So what we're going to need to do is read in the EBIT. Now, I suggest not reading the EBIT, but reading the EBITDA. And the reason for that is we're going to I take that back. We're going to have to compute the taxes. We need the EBIT for taxes. I think we just need the EBIT. So let's put dividends equals net income times payout ratio. Now, of course, not of course, but we need the payout ratio. Okay. And I think we're kind of running out of space, and we're also going to need the EBIT. And the dividends, now the net income is equal to the EBIT minus the interest expense, which we had way below, plus the interest income, right? And that gives us EBT, which right now is earnings. Now, you can see that when we put in taxes, it's going to get a little more complicated. But essentially, I think we've finished it. Now, if we to finally put it together, let's just do a for iteration equal 1 to 15. I'll make it 15, and we put this in, and we put next iteration. Okay, and I'm going to save the file. That's the first thing. Okay, and we try this with the net cash flow. We put net tab and then F3, and we start with our cash flow before financing. And then we put our opening debt. Okay. And then we can put our interest rate. Now, press the F4 on that one. And then we do the same thing with the opening cash. Okay, and we'll put the interest income rate. And we'll put the minimum cash balance. Okay. And finally, we'll put the payout ratio. And we'll put the EBIT. And here's the really good news. The bad news is probably not correct, but the good news is we do get an answer. So I'm going to consider that almost a success. It might even be close. I'm not going to be that confident. To see if it's really working, we can compute computed net cash flow, and just put an equal sign and take our cash balance minus this plus the income minus the cash flow. And it's, you know, I consider this another success because I've never ever got it right the first time without typing anything in wrong. So we got something a little bit, it looks like the interest income is kind of, well, I don't know, maybe something else too. Something with the minimum cash. Let's just try two things. If we put the interest income rate as 0 and the minimum cash balance is 0, it still doesn't work. Shoot. Okay, if we put the dividend payout to be 0, oops. It didn't work still. And then we put the interest expense rate in as 0. Then it finally works good. Let's put this back. No, we've got something wrong. Okay, so I'm going to pause it and fix it. Okay, as usual, it was a little more difficult than I had expected, but then I put a little debug in here so you could see what was going on. Now if you use this debug, you have to be really careful. I made a mistake and I started swearing, because it'll just go around and show you this to you a zillion times and you can't kind of break it out of the loop very well. Now, I think, well, that's about it for this video. Oh, no. Let's do one more thing. Sorry. That's you know, we have this net cash flow, and what we really want to do is do a little bit better job on this iteration business. So let's put here net prior cash flow. I'll just call it prior equals net cash flow. Okay. Now, if what we before we define this prior, let's take if the absolute value of the prior minus the net cash flow is less than, let's say, 0.001, then we're finished. And that means everything's working, so we can exit the sub, I think, or function. Okay. I think that's okay. So the very first time prior will be 0, and we'll have a big difference, and we'll go around and around and see when it gets to be 0. So we've got this little thing here. Whoops, and you know, what I did here is I only went 5 times. So, and perhaps when you're beginning, you should only go 5 times. So let's go to 20 times. So we could go to 30 or 40, but it really wouldn't matter. And so, oops, look at this. Oh, that's something I haven't seen before. We have I expect we have a tiny bit of an error here. Made our balance sheet not balance as well. Alright, and let me look at this damn thing. God, it's frustrating. Okay, I'm gonna have to pause. I might be finished with the video soon, you know. Okay, I kind of finally got it, and I don't. Here was the problem. You just put a straight minimum, maximum. I was afraid of doing that, but you can do that. And you just have to have an identical thing. And I had an error in the model, and this tested an error. So I guess this is okay. So that's the end of this video.